Mark.
Morning all.
Called the meeting to order. December 2020 session, Midland County Board of Commissioners, Executive Committee of the Whole. Ann, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Snyder,
Here.
Bone,
Here.
Glazer, I know you're there, Steve. Commissioner
Here.
Twilliger,
Sorry.
it's okay. Twilliger,
Here.
Dorian,
Here.
Nosen,
Here.
Chairman Geisler,
Here.
7 present, 0 absent.
We're going to start off with presentations, and the first one being Fred Janowski. Are you with us, Fred?
Sir, good morning.
Good morning. You're on.
Okay, thank you. And good morning, all. Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to take a moment to address you, quick situation update on where we're at with our COVID pandemic locally and touch on some vaccine information that we have at this point and keep you up to date on the operations of the health department as we navigate through this very challenging time. So our situation update, I mentioned in my board report that our September number I submitted on my board report, 334 cases. My October report included 572 cases, and these are cumulative cases from the beginning of the pandemic. And my November report indicated 1,118 cases. So since our November report, your fresh off the presses daily number this morning is 2,941 cases. So we've made a tremendous uptick in cases in the last 2 months and certainly are maintaining that level at this point. The two metrics that we always talk about when I present to you are positivity percentage and cases per million. And when the governor spoke yesterday and provided some information regarding the metrics the state was going to use to gauge coming out of another pause, those were two of the metrics that she mentioned along with hospitalizations regarding COVIDs, what they were using to evaluate. So it's kind of standard in public health that a positivity percentage and cases per million allow you to compare Midland to Wayne County, to Oakland County, to Alcona County, because it kind of puts numbers in perspective. The important part of positivity percentage to understand is we use a 7-day running average. So as of this morning, our running average is 11.3%. And if you remember back in the summer, we like that number to be under 3%. Under 5% kind of indicates you have the outbreak under control. And ideally, we want to be under 3%. So we're at 11.3%. It's important to look at it on a 7-day average because daily averages vary based on a lot of factors. We've been as high as 23% a day and as low as 4 or 5% lately. So averaging out, we're at 11.3%. We are faring better than many of our regional or state partners. The state's hovering about 15%. And our region, I know that, Saginaw and Bay, being some of the bigger counties in our region, which are having an impact on our regional numbers, is hovering about 16%. So we have in Midland County seen a temporary decrease the last almost 2 weeks in both positivity percentage and cases per million. So they are trending down. If you look at our curve, that's what you're looking for is a stabilization or a trend downward. It's important to note, even though we are trending down to a spot which we don't want to be. We want to continue to go down. So 11.3% still does not put us in a great spot for positivity percentage. And our cases per million are averaging 311 at this point. And ideally, we want to be under 30. So, I will give you some positive. We are heading in the right direction, at least. The state and the region look to be somewhat stabilizing, but it's almost too soon to tell how good a news that would be. So sorry for the doom and gloom. We're in very serious times, and we hope the trend continues with us locally and we move forward. Those epidemiological orders for the state are going to look at those two things moving forward. So I thought it was nice to explain what exactly we were looking for locally. So part of the state also information which was released, I wanted to touch on and how it affected us locally. And two things that are frequently referenced are outbreaks in businesses, restaurants, and schools. And we've worked really hard, and I think we had a pretty positive experience with our restaurants in Midland County. And we have not had a great issue with outbreaks in food service establishment. Schools as well, I think, was a tremendous success in this because the schools wanted to be open, they wanted to stay open, and we worked very hard to provide them the support through our isolation and quarantine to keep them as safe as possible. And I think they put a tremendous amount of work in with safety provisions and distancing and the way they manage their school to allow them to be somewhat successful. So when you hear data on we have this many school outbreaks, I wanted to give you a little piece of information what that meant to Midland County. So Midland County, from the beginning of school until the pause, we had reported 6 outbreaks within our public schools in the county. So when you think outbreak, you think, rampant spread of disease, and we've got outbreaks. Well, an outbreak is as little as 2 cases. So there's 2 cases who are epidemiologically linked. So of our 6 outbreaks in the county, none of which were in 9 through 12 schools, they were all in K through 8. Those 6 outbreaks only included 26 people. So I think that really demonstrates that we did not have a significant amount of in-school spread. Now, did we have other cases in the schools? Yes, but generically brought in a family member at home would become positive and infect a staff member or a student, and they would come to school and they'd be excluded. But that kind of deals with how we handled in-school transmission, which for our schools was, I think, very effective. Because when it came, when it was all said and done, when the pause started, we had quarantined over 1,900 staff and students, and those only mined 26 cases out of that. So I think isolation and quarantine with public health proved pretty effective with our schools with limiting the spread. Now, the worse your community does, the worse your schools are going to do. So clearly with numbers community right now, that's eventually going to trickle into the schools. We're going to work very hard to continue to give them support with isolation and quarantining and monitoring cases so they can, at least in part, as they most all are now, trying to come back, some sooner than others. So, but I thought that was a positive in this. So it's kind of misrepresented at the state level. Most people don't understand that outbreak can be as little as 2 people. So that was a successful part. So moving forward, we're going to continue to support our schools. We are hoping for that stabilization or decline in numbers, and we'll continue to monitor along with the state for the next 12 days to see where that puts us. Most public health people think that the holidays will not provide a positive impact on our numbers. You're looking at 2 to 3 weeks after an event to see what the impact is. So we're close to 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, and that was kind of targeted nationally and statewide as a concern for our numbers. So we're starting to see, yesterday we saw a slight uptick in our positivity percentage. So by the end of the week, we'll have an idea if Thanksgiving looks like it provided a major impact on more cases or not. And then moving forward, the same for Christmas. So it's definitely a concerning season. So we are, of course, continuing with the message of masking, distancing, getting your flu shot, and making good choices to limit gatherings. So that's the most important thing that we can do moving forward in our communities. Any questions on the situation update?
Yes,
Yes, Kate.
Jay.
Yep.
Good morning, Fred, and I want to tell you again and again how much we appreciate your leadership, and our prayers are with you staying strong and your staff, as well as all of the county employees. I do have a couple of questions with regard to Mid-Michigan and bed availability for the COVID unit and what the situation is there, and also what our long-term care is within not necessarily Pinecrest, but other long-term care such as Stratford and those types of places. Thank you.
Okay, I'll generally address the hospital numbers and say that I'm expecting a report from Dr. Bodner this morning on what today's numbers are. I will say that they are, of course, have an increased capacity from normal, but they are doing well locally compared to other places. So our hospital capacity at this point, I don't want to speak for them, but they're not to the point where they're diverting or anything. They're handling the surge at this point very, very well locally. Regarding your the second part of that, not to mention facilities specifically, of course, but we have had several outbreaks in long-term care or residential care type of facilities within the last several months. At this point, that's our most vulnerable population, and we've seen some very bad things happen in those types of facilities. They're going to be very high in the vaccination list, but that's something that public health and vaccination wants to address at the top of the curve. At this point, we don't have any tremendous outbreaks to report in that regard, but they are constantly a vulnerable facility we work very closely with to limit the spread. So they've got inherent challenges. Think of the challenges of a memory care type facility. They're just more difficult at times to mitigate the spread of disease. But at this point, there's nothing noteworthy that's happening. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, Fred. I'm curious. I think I may have asked this at a prior presentation that you made, but I'm curious if you know what treatment regime Mid-Michigan is offering, or what the community here in Midland, when someone comes in and presents symptoms and tests positive. My limited firsthand data is a neighbor across the street, a young gal, tested positive. She was sick, but came home with nothing. Gutted out. And I just got a message from Carmen Bajena, the Jasper Township supervisor, who has also tested positive. She's in quarantine, but I don't know if she's presenting symptoms or not, but she's just home gutting it out. And it disturbs me, because there are effective treatments that can save people a lot of grief. Why would you just allow people to run the risk, especially older people who are more at risk of mortality and complications from the disease? Because it is serious. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And that's the strange part is that, it presents so differently in almost everybody. The list of symptoms is problematic, I know, from a diagnostic point, because it can be from nausea and diarrhea to fever to loss of taste or smell. There's such a wide variety of symptoms. Now, I can't say provider to provider what they are offering as a treatment option. That's kind of a Dr. Bodner question on what the hot treatment is. But essentially, what you're able to do without a vaccine or without a specifically designed therapeutic course that's standard operating procedure, you're treating symptoms. So I know that it's pretty common to take things like zinc and vitamin D and things like that are usually part of someone's course of treatment to kind of stimulate the immune system. And then what other therapeutics the provider would recommend, but that kind of varies from provider to provider. I don't think there's a standard course of treatment that all providers are following.
All right.
But essentially,
again,
you're treating symptoms.
But when you test positive, I omitted a friend, a man, neighbor, who also in mid-November came down, had symptoms, tested positive, but got nothing.
Sure.
So that, again, I'm curious what the hospital is treating.
Steve,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
hi, this is Jeanette Snyder.
Yeah.
So I can let you know what the hospital did for my husband. My husband just turned 54, and I took care of him at home. He was a severe case. He had a fever for 15 days. It turned into COVID, secondary pneumonia, secondary to COVID. And I was doing well at home, keeping his breathing up with some natural breathing treatments. I had him on a regimen of Tylenol and Motrin because his fever got as high as 104.9.
Wow.
And so I didn't have much luck at the ER. They said that they were going to be coming into some therapeutic type breathing treatments in the next day, but you had to be 55 or older. So they didn't give my husband that. But my doctor called in an inhaler over the weekend, and I have a friend that's an ER doctor, and he saw the pneumonia risks. So he called in a Z-Pack, which by the time my husband finished that, he was doing much better. But when I took him to the hospital, they didn't give him fluids, which I knew he was dehydrated, but they wanted the test to show he was dehydrated. So the test did show he was dehydrated and his sodium was low, and they didn't give him any fluids. And then I wasn't there to pick him up. And I told them that he was on the regimen of Tylenol and Motrin every 3 hours to keep his fever down. And he was at the hospital for 3 hours. So by the time I picked him up, they put him outside and his fever went back up to 100.4. So by the time I picked him back up, he was in worse shape than when I had dropped him off. So I took him home, and with the help of my doctor friend, I took care of him, and I did
Right.
some back padding, and I did everything I knew to do. One point his oxygen got down into the high 80s. And at that point, the ER said if it dropped below 93, they would admit him. But I got it back up to 95. So when he was at the ER, it didn't drop below 95. So that was just crazy to me because I had been struggling between the 95 and the high 80s with his oxygen. But I just prayed and did the best I could at home. But unless you're elderly, and like Fred said, I mean, I'm not blaming anybody. It's just a horrible thing. And if you get it, you just got to do your best and, try to take care of yourself the best you can. I do think whether the Z-Pack made a difference or not, I mean, when he was done taking it, his pneumonia symptoms were better.
I guess I'm just a layman, but I'm researching it for myself, my family. I've read many, many positive things about ivermectin, studies that have come out of University of Eastern Virginia about its efficacy in treatments early on. And it disappoints me that we're not offering something to actually attack the disease. So, and maybe they are, as you said, I know practice to practice, each doctor may have a different approach, but I would think by now that the hospital would have something more than Motrin and aspirin. So that's,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question, but it's such a specific thing for each individual that at this point, treating symptoms and as Commissioner Snyder said, staying well hydrated and things like that is sufficient for most people. And the key is if you're having breathing difficulties, that's when you absolutely have to seek medical care. Everyone doesn't get the same amount of care that President Trump got. And, he had remdesivir and all the different therapeutics that we're trying. So I think you're exactly right. There are things out there that aren't widely available that we hope can start coming out and have a little more research to show how valuable they are, and maybe we can help the rest of our folks. So I agree, Commissioner.
Mark, did you have your hand up? Mark?
I did. Thank you. I did. Hey, Fred, question for you. I know we have a meeting today on the rollout of the vaccine with Jennifer. What can you give me a time frame where you think best guess? I guess let's start with when will that be available to the mass public, and what's the rollout plan? And I know the meeting's today, but just curious.
That's a perfect segue, Mark, into my next part of my presentation. Much like the previous 8 months of COVID, we have more questions than we have answers regarding vaccine. We anticipate getting some vaccine this month. Unfortunately, in the last week or so, the amounts that were expected nationally, statewide, seem to be going down a little bit. So I don't think we're going to get as much as a whole as was once thought. We should have vaccine in Midland County, highest risk people, in December. Now, the hospital is going to get some and start with their highest risk patient care staff. And then we will get some shortly thereafter to help dealing with some of the other high risk folks in that group 1A, like our long-term care folks and some of our other first responders. So I suspect we'll get some in December, but I don't anticipate having enough for the general public for several months. So I think we can start attacking those priority groups in the next couple months. But as far as mass clinics for anybody who wants one, it could be as long as summer. I think optimistically, based on all the things we're hearing, maybe early summer, maybe a May-ish, that we could have enough for everybody. But it's probably going to be summer before it is widely available. And again, we still don't know. We're still not getting any information on what kind of dosage we're going to get. We've got a couple of products that that are soon to be approved and soon to be distributed. The 10th is a day that we should know some more, because that might be when vaccine starts to ship. So it's going
Gay, I think you had a question.
Thanks, Fred. Thank you.
Gay?
I'm not sure if anyone caught the news blip about how Denver is doing their distribution. Did you see that, Fred?
I did not.
Okay. And you draw the correlations on what the community is doing for their distribution, and they're utilizing community-based routes when they were doing the food distribution. And they have a lot of different socioeconomic populations and
Sure.
minorities, and they're really having some issues with getting the vaccine. So they were trying to soften that blow ahead of time and move forward to Midland County. And we do have some routes of distribution from the flood that we could actually activate, that our people are used to going to those areas. And it's just a thought. I'm pretty sure Jennifer's going to say that she's already thought of that,
Mhm.
but we've got some routes already implemented. And I guess that's one of the only good things that you can say that's going to come out of the flood. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think what we're doing right now is we're trying to identify all those options, because again, we're not going to have to worry about that for a few months down the road, because we're simply not going to have enough vaccine. And if I can go back to 2008 with H1N1, if you remember that, when we did our H1N1 clinics, we were literally getting a couple dozen doses a week for the first 6 weeks or so. So depending, we're going to get more than that at this point, but we're trying to identify all those things, Gay, which are possibilities. I know that pharmacies will also be part of the mass distribution. Going to host clinics, mass clinics, based on scalable plans, based on how much vaccine we get, and based on those priority groups. So all options are on the table, and we're researching those right now to be able to ramp up when we get vaccine. So
I
Hey,
just
Fred.
always love having a good plan in place, and it feels good to have the strategies and routes. So we have a plan in place. We're ready to go. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
thanks.
Fred, it's Scott.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about what's the decision on how much we get versus another county or versus another state? What are the criteria being used?
And that's a great question. We have not been alerted to exactly what that is. I know population is always part of it. And with COVID, your biggest concern is health systems, which are inundated. So, all these community things that are happening to limit spread are designed to allow your health system or your hospitals to maintain. So we believe that part of the formulary is going to be which areas healthcare networks are the most flooded. We'll probably get some priority. And then population will be part of it as well. So it's tough to say, but I know that we have been informed as late as, or as early as, next week, that every community will get some vaccine. So how much, but every community will get some, but the exact formulary is a little unknown. Sorry to be
Any more-
vague, but again, there's way more questions than answers. We expect really by the end of the week to have a better idea where we're going to be. But at this point, we're just kind of guessing. That's why it's important for us to have scalable plans and multiple options, and because we're not exactly sure how quickly we're going to be able to get on board.
Well,
Are there any
I asked the question because very soon after that, you're going to get discussions about equity and fairness. And so knowing what we do and knowing how much is going to be given to us and under what conditions, we better have a response ready about how we're distributing that in the most fair and equitable way.
Absolutely. And the good news on that front is that we're not going to have to make too many of those decisions. The priority groups laid out are very clear from the federal level, and those are designed to make sure that the most at-risk people get vaccine first. So that is a very strong guide for us, because we would really be unethical to provide vaccine to those who didn't qualify in the priority groups. So, we're stick to those, and that's a nice guide to at least start with, and then we can deal with the equity issues, within that framework. But I agree, it's something we want to take very seriously.
Well, I thought you said, and I may have misunderstood, that you are not likely, or we are not likely to get enough vaccine to even handle the 1A populations. Is that
Correct.
not right?
That is correct. So, we're asking, we're going to work with to help them help us prioritize. So for instance, the hospital is doing their own prioritization with their employees of the batch that they're going to get based on their metrics. If we take a agency, one of our first responder agencies, and we have limited vaccine, we'd ask them to go through their staff and maybe pull out people who have already been had COVID positive, and not pull them out of the group, but to put them to the back of the line within that group, because there's some natural immunity that they probably have from having the disease. So it's, we're going to have to help with getting input from agencies to prioritize to make that happen. So you are correct. We don't anticipate getting enough for everyone, even in 1A to start with.
Well, just all I can say is at this point in time, absolute transparency is going to be important here, because it's not hard to visualize what's going to happen nationwide. There isn't enough for everybody. Decisions are going to be made.
Sure.
Even going back to Steve's comment, the president of the United States got some pretty preferential treatment. I get that, as in terms of a therapeutic, but this, I just don't see this going well unless we're absolutely 100% transparent.
Couldn't agree more. You would probably not be surprised the amount of response we've got from our community already, with calls asking to be put on the list and
Sure.
list. And when you talk about pre-existing conditions, what's that going to look like? What qualifies as a pre-existing condition? Are we going to make people prove they have a pre-existing condition? There are challenges that we're trying to figure out just to be equitable as we can. So it is a concern, and we will make every attempt. Communication is always an issue. So of course, we're going to make all of our normal communication paths, and we actually have hired a temporary communications person to help us be transparent and help us flood the community with not only preventive messages, but also information regarding priority groups and our clinics and whatnot. So we understand that to be a tremendous undertaking, and it's certainly a priority for us.
Just a thought, it wouldn't be inappropriate to have an article in the paper right now, very specific to who gets what when, and, just trying to get ahead of this curve, because it's going to go south.
Yeah, we are actually working on that as we speak, and actually have a planned town meeting as an example of something we can do. Next Tuesday, we have another town hall specific to vaccine and priority groups. as part of the Midland Daily News. That was a pretty well-received thing we had in the community. And we will be using social media, the newspaper, and other means to get that word out. So I appreciate the comment, and we are certainly headed down that path to flood the community with information.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Fred?
Mr. Chair, I have two.
Okay,
So one, Fred, thank you for that information. Very valuable to us and appreciate your time. I hear virus and disease used interchangeably. Is it one or the other? Can you use them interchangeably? That's my first question. My second question is, I understand testing it on the elderly and the first responders. It makes me a little nervous. Does it make you nervous? And if something happens to the first responders and it has an adverse effect, then we suddenly don't have as much help as we need on the front lines.
Those are two great questions. The first question, coronavirus is the vehicle that can cause the disease. So it's kind of, people just say COVID and whatnot, but if you talk about it is a virus and it causes disease. So that's, so they're kind of used, I don't want to say interchangeably, but people just throw COVID out there as kind of an all-inclusive term, but it is a virus which can cause morbidity and mortality. So the second part of that is, the information we're getting is there's a implied concern with America that the vaccine was fast-tracked and not done safely. And the data, the process it went through, public health is getting all the information that it was done appropriately, just fast-tracked, and that it is not a risk to take the virus. However, there are potential very short-term reactions that we have determined in our, in the research of the virus and the trials, that you have some short-term symptoms. So part of the plan will be allowing, say, the fire department, we don't want all their people to get it on the same day, because then when that first 24 hours, when they have mild flu-like symptoms, they're all sick at the same time. So you're exactly right. We'll break it up within those groups to make sure that everyone isn't having those mild symptoms at the exact same time. So very great point that I didn't mention. And the side effects are indicated to be mild and short term, but it's certainly part of the plan to also structure it so we make sure that everyone doesn't have mild short term at the same time. So great question.
Thanks.
Fred, the term lockdown, is that a good term? And is that what the state is using?
No, the state's term, I believe, is pause. I don't think that what we're in right now is a lockdown. Certainly from a public health perspective only, and this is not from an economic perspective or a small business perspective, from a public health perspective, these pauses are designed to basically discourage gatherings of people. At its simplest level, we want to discourage gatherings of people. So whatever the state comes up with for epidemiologic orders, they're designed with that in mind. All the other impacts are outside of my office to be figured out with what it means to small business and things like that. But in its truest form, from my perspective, the value that public health is getting is limiting gatherings. Is it perfect? I don't think so. But anything that we're doing right now with our public messaging is discourage gatherings. Stay within your own family. Don't have garage parties. Don't gather with other families, because that's what we're seeing in our case investigation. Gatherings of people, small and large, are enhancing disease spread. So from its truest sense, that's the value that I would get out of something like this from a public health perspective.
Well, I'm trying to determine, since the governor has been knocked down as far as being the decision maker, and it's now supposedly the director of the Michigan State Health Department, is that correct?
That is correct. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But how do you fit into that? Can you direct the county of Midland differently than the state health director is doing?
That's a great question. The governor, of course, had executive orders. The MDHS director, Gordon, has epidemic orders, which are empowered to him by the Michigan Public Health Code. Local health officials are also empowered by the same exact Michigan Public Health Code. So the rule of thumb is that that's a state epidemic order. I could put in more stringent things locally, but we don't ever be less stringent. So we could say, for instance, we're having an issue on Northwood with gatherings. So I might be able to, as a local public health official, say, we're going to make our gathering size even smaller here in Midland County and say you can only gather in groups of 5, but we don't go less strict than the state epidemic order. But to answer your question, his power is granted to him by the same public health law that mine is to me.
Okay, well, I'm just concerned. I just feel that some of these orders are so debilitating that we're just robbing people of their lives.
I can't disagree with you. I think that there are concerns, and when I referenced the schools and the restaurants earlier, our experience in Midland County is that we do not see a significant amount of outbreaks or disease transmission within food service establishments or schools. So to represent that, I think was not appropriate for what was happening in Midland County. However, that might be the case, if you're making rules for the state, it could be different. But that's, I thought that part of it was a little unfair to our businesses and schools because they did very, very well. So I do agree there's concerns that are out there with any limitations.
Thank you. Any further for Fred? There being nothing, unless you have a parting word, Fred.
I do. Be safe for the holidays. All those things about gathering, it's not where you go. Essentially, it's what you do. And we'd encourage everyone to stay safe, limit gatherings, continue with your masking and distancing. And if you haven't got your flu shot, I know a guy who can hook you up with one. So don't hesitate to ask. And I appreciate the opportunity. We will keep you posted moving forward with vaccine. It's rapidly moving. So I will keep you all posted as soon as I hear something.
Is his name Fred Janowski?
He is, yes. So
okay. Thank you, Fred.
So, yep, thanks.
All right. The next topic is, where are you, Bridget? I can't see you. Okay, you're on.
I'm on. Okay, I'll try and flip through this pretty quickly because everyone's had it since yesterday and had an opportunity to read it. If you stop me, if you have a question on something, I fly through. Parking lot, if you have not been back behind the courthouse, is done and looks great. We have not gotten any final bill from MDOT, so I can't report on what that was, but the process happened actually rather quickly once we got moving. We are down to 101 inmates if you've looked at the jail charts. This is going to impact our budget a little bit more than originally thought. Mike sent down an amendment yesterday for the budget adjustment to adjust it even more so that we can be as close to actual as possible, or what we're predicting to be actual, unless something changes in the next month. Pinecrest, we did hire a director for Pinecrest, Corey Priest. His first day is going to be January 4th. We also filled the director of nursing position. I think that Heather, and I can't remember her last name, I think she begins the middle of this month, middle to end of this month. So all things are going on a good path there. The addition that Three Rivers is constructing has been started and is underway. They've gotten the concrete poured. They've been great to work with. I wasn't surprised. They just finished the cardiovascular unit out at the hospital, so they're used to working in a healthcare environment. So things are going really well. Community corrections, just want to remind everybody that drug court is in its 10th year, and I know Judge Beal came and talked about that a little bit, but we've had 65 graduates since the start of that program. And, when you think about the intensity of drug court, I just really think that that's something to celebrate. So wanted to draw your attention to that. I'm going to skip over to emergency management. I was going to bring up the meeting this afternoon that we're having on COVID vaccine distribution, Mark already mentioned it, so he stole my thunder. Thanks, Mark. Good job. Moving down to finance, budget, and administration. I want to thank Mike for submitting the county incentive reporting requirements, which if you go on our website on the finance page is the dashboard information. Every year I bring this up because I want to remind all of you that we are jumping through hoops for money that the state already owes us. Thank you to previous administrations requiring us to do this so that revenue sharing can be granted to the counties instead of just given it to us like they're supposed to. So it's a lot of work that, in my opinion, really we shouldn't have to do. So thank you, Mike, for doing that. Also want to congratulate the entire organization, and Midland County employees are once again extremely generous with the United Way campaign and through all of our extra projects and fundraisers and our pledges. We raised $28,500, which was $5,500 more than our original campaign goal of $23,000. So really, really, really want to thank everybody for their generosity this year. And if you ordered a shirt, Jessica has it in her office. I'll skip over the health department. Fred did a good job of covering all that stuff. HR, we are in negotiations with both Road Patrol and Command at this point. IT, we will be talking this afternoon about, we went out for bids to redo the website, which is included in my goals, which you all approved. Couple reasons. First off, it seems hard to believe that we just did this 6 years ago, but our website already is stale and not able to keep up really with a lot of the demands. So we're looking at functionality in a couple different areas. We'll talk more about this at the committee meetings this afternoon, but we actually received 11 proposals, and the one we're going with is sort of middle of the road as far as pricing. But in my opinion, in the whole committee's opinion, the most creative RFP that we saw, which is what we really want. So during COVID, we saw even more a need. You've heard me talk about this before, the need for an employee portal. With so many of our employees working remotely, we didn't have a way to get to them all. And other employees who didn't have technology, that we sent them home with, were at home and they didn't have the ability to access certain things that they needed to. This employee portal will be a way for them to remote into, instead of an intranet, an employee portal that has forms and policies and information and announcements and all that stuff. Really critical right now. The other thing is the ability to increase the number of services we can do online, as well as bring our website into compliance with ADA. We have a lot of, we've been discouraging people from coming into the building, and the best way for us to do that is by offering opportunity for people to do things online. So it's time. And I think that we were all, I would say Jessica was on the committee, we were all really excited about what we saw with these proposals. We had, we actually did interviews with 4 of the 11, and the one that we're recommending is probably, in my opinion, the best one. So more on that later this afternoon. And it's a little bit of a hurry. I just want to tell you this because there's an opportunity for us to potentially use some of that CDBG grant money from the MEDC towards this, but it has to be spent before the end of the year. So that's why the contract is sort of being rushed. Bill, I really appreciate Bill's time. He took some time this weekend to work on it too, so we could get it in and get it into you before the end of the year. The grant isn't a for sure thing, but if there is an opportunity for us to, carve out some of these things that are kind of related to COVID, the employee portal and the ADA compatibility, then we're going to try and do that. We're going to try and utilize that as much as possible. Haven't talked about MSU Extension a lot, but I do want you to take time to look at the information in the report on MSU. They're really doing a great job of providing a lot of services remotely, a lot of training online. They've really stepped up to the plate. This has been obviously a weird year for everybody. Even the 4-H clubs are meeting on Zoom. So that, everybody's becoming skilled in online meetings. So if there's a positive, we're all learning new things, right? We're all becoming a little bit more functional. Parks and Rec, we did get a little bit of grant money from MMRMA to help offset the cost of the fencing that we put up, $3,000. Really can't say enough about the team of people on the county's staff that are like involved in FEMA calls regularly. John Schmoody, Kevin, Carl, not so much now since we did get approval for the flyover. FEMA calls that obligating, so they've obligated that. So we should see about 75% reimbursement of the cost of that $666,000. So really appreciate everybody's efforts on that. Mike, Denise, I cannot say enough about Denise Mason and how much time she has put into this whole process. And Mike right behind her. So, and Jen's been on the calls too. So just a lot of teamwork here that can be a little stressful at times. I'll just leave it there. So lots of gratitude. We'll bring your attention to number 7 under Parks and Rec, that we do have some folks thinking that next to the rail trail is a public dumping ground for debris. That can't happen. One of the most contentious projects that we have for FEMA is debris management. I'm not even sure if they're gonna right now agree that all 3 sites that we bid out for debris management are eligible under FEMA, which is not gonna be a pleasant conversation if that doesn't happen. So we need to minimize people thinking that they can just take their stuff and drop it there. I think that's pretty much it. You know, Ross, I always bring this up about this time of year, is gone as normal above and beyond for the veterans in this community. And he's actually going to put a letter in the newspaper thanking the citizens of this community for all the extra that they've done for veterans during the last year, especially at Christmas time. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Did I skip over anything anybody wants to ask a question on? Because I know we're limited on time.
Okay,
Gay.
go, Kay. You're gay.
Just a quick thought about the debris management. You know, I've noticed that a little bit, Bridget, areas that this is maybe Emerson Park, but it's like you look like, what are you thinking? You know, and I'm wondering if we could, as part of our PR, the public relations, and I see that Jeff's on the he's on the meeting right now. If there's like some type of little ditty that we could create, like the over the nose is where it goes or something like that,
Right.
that we could communicate to folks that it's not appropriate and it's a team. We all live here and let's keep our community beautiful. Just something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I know John was going to send letters to some of the neighbors in that area, just reminding them that it's not a public dumping ground for debris. And, you know, if that doesn't seem to be productive, certainly we can put something just as politically correct on social media. So thank you for that.
Okay, is
All
that
right,
it?
I'm good.
Thank you, Bridget. Counselor, you're up.
Well, thank you and good morning, everybody. Interesting comments by everybody, but particularly Fred Janowski. I thought that was really educational from my end. Not surprisingly, the last few weeks have been dealing with the typical things, the FOIAs, which have in the last several months become more intricate. We have more people inquiring about COVID-related matters, statistics, deaths, you know, the like. A lot of people seem to be interested in that. And we also have the continual interest by the folks in our flood-related responses. So those are more difficult than normal. And of course, also we have the regular, primarily sheriff-related matters. And as you know, we had a recent appeal, which has been responded to, but I've not heard any response from our response. And I thank you all for taking that up at the spur of the moment. Most of the work has also been involved with, not surprisingly, Four Lakes Task Force and our condemnation action.
just to bring you up to quick speed on that, there was a settlement. It was approved by the bankruptcy court. At this moment, the people are wrestling with the order to implement the condemnation in circuit court. And right now, it's like I said, it's a wrestling match. But hopefully it will be resolved and there'll be an order entered, which will put the property in the hands temporarily of Four Lakes Task Force. I know that they are interested in transferring, not only we Midland County had transferred to them in 2015, but also the newly taken property that is the dam structure itself to the county. Bridget and I have been in contact with MMRMA, Craig Mansur, and we are working through certain issues regarding liability and valuation with regard to the dam structure, which will become Midland County's in the not too distant future. Lastly, a couple of things. As Bridget said, we've been working with JJ Creative, Jesse and James Creative from New York website, and they've been really cooperative, and everybody's been working hard trying to get a contract together. And also, we've had a brief discussion with the health director, Fred, regarding hopefully what is not going to be necessary, which is enforcement of the orders of both the state and the local health department. And I've also had a little conversation with Yvonne Fisher regarding the activities out at Pinecrest, and I think that's everything seems to be under control there. So that's essentially it. It's COVID season, and we're dealing with floods and COVIDs, but still. So
Does that kind of wrap it up?
does.
Okay, any questions for Bill? There being none, we will progress. I would say, Bill, I really liked your new format. I thought it was very, very good. Update on commissions and boards of commissions. Commissioner Bone?
At this point, I don't really have anything significant to report.
Thank you. Steve? Are you there, Steve?
I am. I have been attending my various township meetings, which have gone very well. Mid-Michigan Community Action has canceled their meetings. The Substance Use Disorder Oversight Policy Board haven't met with them since early in the outbreak. So, there's been no contact with the substance use group in Lansing. It looks like my other townships are shifting to online meetings. But in terms of anything to report, coming out of them, I don't have anything substantial to bring forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorian?
I have nothing to report other than that we've been meeting with regard to the patrol deputies contract, which is up. And that will, I think we're going to present at the next board meeting. Is that correct, Bridget? Okay, that's all I've got.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Nosen?
Yeah, just one comment for representing both MAC and NACO, the National Association of Counties. We're in lame duck session, both at the national level and at the state level, and things are happening fast and furious that are impacting counties. And so you will likely see some calls to action, both at the state and the federal level. I would really encourage you to please fill that out. It's pretty simple. especially after you've done it once, they've kept your data in there. You basically have to hit one button that says send to your senator or congressman or whatever. But especially with COVID and financing, there is this desire to continually leave out counties and townships in terms of funding. And so I would just encourage you, there are a couple, at least one from NACO and one from MAC that are out there at this point in time. Please go ahead and respond to that. Our response rate in the county level at the state is less than 20% of county commissioners. So I'd really like to get that number up if possible. That's all I have.
Add on to that, Scott? Can I
Go
add
ahead.
on to that? That any request you send include the line or language, please send the money with very few or no strings attached. Because the problem is they
Yeah.
earmark money for us with all these strings and then we can't spend it on anything.
Yeah, I understand that. Plus, the other issue is we would much rather have it come directly to us as a county than going to the state and have it distributed to us. Funny things can happen with that kind of allocation procedure. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Commissioner Snyder?
Hi, yes, thank you. So in all my meetings, I try to, since I've been a commissioner, stop by different areas and learn about them in the county that I don't know much about. And one of the areas I hadn't met with was the dive team. So I did that last week, and Adam Walsher leads that now, if I'm saying that right, Deputy Walsher. It was very interesting. We have a storage facility in Sanford, so that's another reason why. And the road commission uses some of that in the back, and it's also a repo area, but they store all of the dive equipment there. And I know that we don't have a lake now, but I do believe that the dive team is still a pretty important part of the community. And the concern is maybe this winter, some people thinking that the river is going to be solid and they can run snowmobiles out there in the stumps. And so there's some concern. They're going to have a live training December 17th, and anybody is welcome. It's going to be all day, but any of the commissioners, they welcome, even if you just want to come out for an hour and see some of that training and what they're doing. Adam will get me that information. Oh, and we met for over an hour, and I'm hoping that I'm not misspeaking any of the information. Bridget could let me know. But I thought it was neat to know that they have these two smaller boats. They almost look like a raft type style. They got new engines on those, new motors for like 3,000 to 4,000 each on those within the last year or two. And those proved like really beneficial during the floods. They were able to run them up to the generator behind the courthouse to fill it with gas and keep it running. And there really wasn't any other way to get to it. And so your dive team folks ran those boats up there and kept that generator full of gas. So I thought that was really interesting, just to sit down and talk with them and learn, some of what they do for us. They do have a couple bigger boats that are not as useful. One was federal funded, so there's stipulation of what we can do with that. They thought they might be good at the time, but I'm sure they'll have things come up in the near future. But it was just very interesting to learn about that, as I haven't sat with them and talked to them. So they welcome anybody that wants to anytime. Also, Four Lakes, Bill hit on this. I meet with them once a week. So a lot going on there, drinking from a fire hose. They are very transparent, and they try to put everything out there on Facebook and their website if you have any questions. But all of that is moving in a very positive direction, I believe. Parks and Rec, I do like the idea Gay mentioned about, maybe even using the social media. That's a free outlet, because there's an issue with dumping, right? Some Sanford residents, they want to clean up their area, maybe it's not Sanford. I have no proof who is doing it. So let me just say that right now. But, they want to get rid of some stuff and they're dumping it on park property. And I think social media is a great free way to just say, let's all work together and keep working together and keep our area clean. So I'm glad Gay mentioned that. There was other things, but those are the highlights that I did. And thank you.
Okay, and I guess I'm up next. The only thing that I had last week was Michigan Works. And I went out to Bay City and there was nobody there. So I went to the meeting at Washington Street and there was nobody there. They called me because they needed a quorum. And so I responded. And after I responded, I couldn't give them the code fast enough. So they dropped me. And so I didn't get to go to the Zoom meeting last week. So anyways, that's about it. The other items are commissioners' comments. Commissioner Bone. You
Well,
have
I just say, I guess I'd say, only thing I'd say, it's exciting that we're starting to get some vaccines coming in. Everybody try to stay safe and let's get through the holidays and hopefully we're getting close to the end. Obviously a few more months, but at least things are trending the right direction. So let's just stay safe and everybody healthy and happy.
Thank you. Commissioner Glazer.
Appreciate all the updates. As Mark said, I think just be careful, pay attention to what you're doing. I think there are effective treatments for COVID, take heart in that. And remember, it is a serious disease. People are having long-term complications from it and certainly dying from it. So it's not to be taken lightly. So thank you.
Commissioner Terwilliger.
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and give my report, which is brief. Kind of missed over me, but that's okay. I'll do both of them at the same time. That's okay. I just wanted to mention that I'm really pleased the direction and the progress, and it's been significant at Pinecrest. And for all of you to know that it's really all moving in a really good direction. There's a lot of dedication, a lot of work that's been infused into that over the past 9 months, I would say, since like April. So I'm thankful that I feel good about that. With regard to my comments, I'm thankful for Fred to have the vast amount of knowledge that he has, and he's right on top of things. We are, it was a good hire, huh, Eric? So when we were part of that team, and I'm thankful for all of your knowledge. Thankful, Bridget, for all of the FEMA work that you're doing, and I look forward to. I guess I didn't see when Jen's meeting is this afternoon. What time is that, Bridget?
Bridget?
I don't even remember, 3 or 3:30 or something like that, but she's
Okay.
invited the people that Fred asked her to invite. So it's not an open meeting. It's just a brainstorming session on vaccine distribution.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Gay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dorian.
I'd just like to thank Fred for his update. And he is right on this. And he has a lot more power than you think that he does, being that public health director. I also do want to say that I did look at the parking lot at the courthouse and it does look fantastic. So kudos there. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, just a quick note as someone who has had COVID now, and my wife, and we're both coming out the other end of it. Yesterday was the end of our 14-day quarantine, and by and large, we are minus symptoms right now. I still have some pink eye issues that I'm dealing with. And just a note, the pink eye thing was one that I didn't even realize, but did some research, and sure enough, it's a symptom in about 3% of the cases. And so from my perspective, understanding what your symptoms are and then just treating the symptoms during that 14-day quarantine is I think the best you can do. Steve, I wish I had some of those, kind of front end chemicals or, drugs that are helping overall. But I think at this point in time, it's really about treating symptoms and trying to get through it. And as soon as you start having respiratory problems, get into the hospital. That's all I can really say about that. So thanks to all. I hope to be back with actually a picture next time around. But my eyes are still kind of pink, and I look pretty ugly right now.
Well, glad to hear you're doing better, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Commissioner Snyder?
Hi, thank you. Just very encouraged of Fred's presentation. He is very knowledgeable, and it is a good reminder that the health department does have a lot of power. And, as we make our decisions going forward about our health department, it's a good thing to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. My comment is about schools and restaurants. I really think that this COVID thing has really struck them both down, and I hope that Fred can come up with some solutions to opening the restaurants back up. I think they're bankrupting half of our restaurants. That's it for me. Any more? There being nothing, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned until Tuesday, December 15th, 2020 at 9 a.m. to meet in a regular session of the Board of Commissioners and for the committees to resume their duties.
All right.
See you soon.
See you
No,
then.
no,
We're
no. Wait.
Yep. Be
Wait,
well.
wait.
Don't go off.
I don't know why you
Okay.
guys are adjourning. We still have service awards to do.
Oh, well, we're adjourning
I'm confused.
we're
Adjourning
not
the
totally
meeting portion.
adjourned yet.
Okay,
Thank you, Ann. It's a good thing we have you.
right. I think everyone was kind of on that page, but
Well, it's 10:09. I guess we're 9 minutes late.
it's okay.
Okay,
Jess is gonna share
you
her
and Mark.
screen.
You and Mark are on this together.
Yep, Jess is gonna share the screen, and I'm gonna read the individuals' names and their years of service. So,
Well, go ahead.
all right. So for, with 5 years of service, we have Jeff Ruddick in the prosecutor's office, Jacob Fink, Ryan Smith, Brandon Akins, Lauren Huron, Laura Wright, Jody Garner, Mike Yelsick, Alan Block, Audine Talley, John Schmoody, Chad Thomas, Jennifer Boyer, and Bridget Champagne. Congratulations to those folks with 5 years of service. 10 years of service is Adam Walzer from the Sheriff's Office. Going to 15 years of service, we have Ross Alec, Michael Carpenter, Paul Close, Michelle Brickell, and Joseph Amond. 20 years of service, we have Charlotte Coble, Christopher India, Brandon Hodges, William Urisco, Brandy Allensworth, Angela Lewis, and Jason Brandt. Congratulations to those folks. 25 years of service, Myron Green, Thomas Anderson, Ken Randall, Michael Sutherland, Scott Stevenson. Congratulations. 30 years of service, myself, and Joyce McLaughlin. You're up, Mark.
Well, obviously, this is a little different than usual, but just go saying that our county employees are fantastic employees. We appreciate, as the commissioners, we appreciate everything you all do for us. Thank you for your service, and just so fortunate to have such a great team that works together. So thank you all for your years of service, and we appreciate everything you do for the county. Thank you.
All right, now you can adjourn your meeting, Commissioner Geisler.
Thank you, Ann, and I want you to, I did a little math and I figured that you came to work when you were 9 years old.
Exactly correct.
Okay.
Thank you for
On that-
recognizing that.
On that note, meeting is adjourned until Tuesday, December 15th, 2020 at 9 a.m. to meet in a regular session of the Board of Commissioners and for the committees to resume their duties. And now
Have a
that
good
we're
day,